you know just how time-consuming it can be searching for royalty-free media. And when you do find some, they're always
All right. Let's see the that. So, all right. Good afternoon. I don't know if there's going to be many people watching. Alexander will be back again. I don't know what's happened with all the views lately. They're very low. Anyway, don't matter. Hi, Alexis. How you doing? We'll let it rolling. People might be at work. I could only do this shift, this stream, both of us this afternoon. Really, it would have been more ideal this evening, actually. But Alexander is about 3 hours ahead, so he's at about 3 o'clock. Yeah. So we're gonna have the. I'm fine, thank you. I'm really. Do you know what, Alexa? For age, I'm great. I'm just doing what I'm doing on here, and it's great. Just doing the little bits and pieces, little shows. I don't know if you saw Sunday show, Alexis. The part one that was with Alexander. Very perspective, everything what he says. Now, if anybody sees this stream at the moment and actually thinks it's not what you're going to be expecting, there's a lot of stuff, and I don't think. I think there's only a certain amount of people really. I've got to try and do another one in the evening, like try and get other people who will talk with him, because there's quite a few people like Banksy and all that lot. Know a lot. Here he is. Here is Mr. Alexander. Hello, mate.
Hi. I was brewing some tea, so that's a legitimate excuse for the British.
I I think a lot of people are at work, Alexander, so the views might just be a little bit low today, this afternoon. But they'll build up, mate.
No, I'm not worried about that.
Alexander, what I was going to say to you, did you record everything we done on Sunday?
Record or recall?
I mean, did you do a copy of the show at all?
No, I don't have my own channel yet.
Oh, shit. Because I deleted the stream by accident.
Happens.
All right. I will, but a lot of people, I think I could get the recording of it on StreamYard. But I think a lot of people they really enjoyed Sunday.
I always recommend the streamers, and they never listen to me for some reason, to use a separate software for the streaming itself and a different software for the recording. That way, if one of them fails, you have the other one both as a backup and as a way
No!
to process the
It was
file.
my fault. It was my fault. I meant
Yeah.
to delete something else, but I deleted that by accident. But I've got, I've got a copy here. I've just seen. I've got a copy on StreamYard of the recording. So
Yeah, you can restore files that were deleted from the computer.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of software for that. If you didn't overwrite it by putting in something else bigger, then it should still be in the computer's
No,
memory.
I've just checked on my StreamYard. So I've got the recording here.
Ah,
So it won't be visual. It'll just be voice. So actually, I had the recording on, so it's okay.
I don't exactly have the sort of what's the word, tits to pull in viewers with my looks, so it's not that much.
Look, it'll take time. People will gradually come over. Each time I do the streaming thing, I put it as a premiere. People can listen to. The reason why is because somebody struck my station for the hell of it, and I lost my station. I had about nearly 1,000 subscribers, and I'm just rebuild this up again. I've started from scratch again. So,
We should add the option of a mailing list. That's what the bigger streamers do, so that even if people got unsubscribed, they get an update when you release the stream to the email.
Oh, okay.
Or have an option where it's only once a month, so people don't get annoyed by it and put it in a spam folder. If it's every day, they might start to block it, but if it's only once a month, then they'll notice when they got unsubscribed.
Yeah.
Have a weekly newsletter of all the streams that you did, so even if somebody didn't watch it live, they can review it that way.
Yeah, somebody had a way of striking me, and they took my channel down, and I just rebuild it up again. Sorry.
You should diversify with Rumble and Odyssey.
That's what I'm going to start doing. Actually, sooner or later.
I don't know if you have the super chat, but in Rumble they take less of a percentage from them, so it will also be economically beneficial.
Yeah, I've got to build up a crowd from Rumble, though, haven't I? So it's fucking hard.
I don't know. I like them quite a lot. They're
is that what you use? Oh, is that what you're on with? Yeah, Rumble.
I mean, you're the director of the show, but I think their business model is better for the creators than YouTube, obviously.
Really? Yeah.
They take.
I might start doing it. It's a destination and set up an account and do a destination, and because I could stream from 3 different places on here, so I might start doing it. So what do you want to start with? What do you want to carry on? Because there was a lot of things we didn't touch on. You wanted to touch on, didn't you, Alexander?
I'm not really. I don't have like a checklist of things I need to say, but we didn't. The whole 3 hours we talked mostly about like religious stuff. We didn't even.
Yeah,
I don't think we even talked about the current war, except
right. How
mentioned
about
that.
you talking about the army and that, because you you had a lot of doings with that, didn't you? So, like, do
Yeah,
you want
I
to talk
didn't
about your story?
actually. I don't know if it was misunderstood or something. I didn't actually get any combat role. I did like paperwork. Most of
Oh,
in the
okay.
service, I was just shredding papers or doing like inventory checks.
All right. Okay.
The biggest thing
Okay.
I did was planning for future military operations. I managed the food budget. That's the big
Yeah, but you're part of the army. That's
senior
part of the
position.
team, though, isn't it? That's part of the team, though, isn't it? I mean,
Uh, it's bigger than part of the team. I was exposed to the classified plans, and all I can say is that the reason we're not invading the northern parts like we
yeah,
wanted to is we know our plans are bad, like really, really bad. Like they'll fail within the first half an hour, and we don't have a good backup. So our army is secretly incompetent, has been for decades, and they don't want to start a more serious war than in Gaza because the moment we're more than walking distance away from our border, our entire logistics chain will fail. And then they'll ask who's responsible. It's going to be all the senior generals. And once a general is a total failure, he will have a problem getting into politics, which is
yeah,
so that's the real reason they don't start the counter invasion into Lebanon, because it'll fail miserably within the first 5 miles.
yeah.
That's like not classified because it was in the what you call it uh, public. What's the British word for ombudsman? Like public complaints
Um,
representative
yeah,
from the government.
yeah.
Yes. So
Complainants.
basically, 3/4 of our supply trucks can't even start the engine. That's how bad things are. And that was before we started a giant military operation in Gaza, where the 1/4 of the trucks that do work are being used in.
Mm,
So, yeah, sadly, for me personally, because I live in the north, there won't be a serious war in the north. Not until we finish with Gaza.
really?
And, and I can tell all sorts of like funny stories from the military service, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how funny people will find it. And I can talk about geopolitics and stuff too. Uh,
Well,
like Israel,
would,
Ukraine.
have you seen?
I
I
can talk
mean,
about missiles. I'm a
yeah.
mechanical
Talk.
engineer,
Yeah.
so I can
Touch
talk
on
about
that.
weapon system and stuff.
Yeah. Touch on that. Touch on that. The missiles and how the missiles and how people look. Touch on the thing where they were saying like Israel is cutting off all the hospitals in Palestine and all that. Is that any truth, or is it all
Cutting
made up?
off
All
what?
access to access to hospitals and things like that. You know, and
Um,
they're
they
saying,
had the big issue is, I mean, it's just like in you British experienced in Afghanistan and Iraq, the enemy will look for places where they can hide from bombing. So
mm,
the most common place for the terrorists, the enemy combatants, the whatever you call them,
mm,
insurgents, I think. The place where they will choose to hide is hospitals and mosques because they rely on the idea that the Air Force won't bomb the building, unlike any other building. So that's
yeah,
intentionally where they put their all their stuff. I mean, even before the war, we knew that their big Hamas command bunker is right under the Shifa hospital.
Yeah.
So it was like very well known by everybody for like a decade or two. We knew exactly where they're all hiding right under this hospital.
Yeah.
And what we did in the military operation is we surrounded it and we gave them like 2 weeks to evacuate all the patients, which they mostly did. And then we sort of did a sweep and pretended we didn't find the underground parts. And then the army sort of pulled back and let them repopulate the place. And we waited for like a month or two where all the major terrorists felt safe enough to go back above ground into this hospital complex. And
Yeah.
then we made an operation like, what was it, a month or 2 months ago, where we swooped in, locked off the upper floors, and captured like 300 or 400 of them in that one hospital. So, I mean, the hospitals do get like electricity and water and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But medicine, I don't know how the deal goes, but they do get supply trucks. Like the big secret is that Israel was actually feeding the Gaza people all this time. Like Israel is a net exporter of food, and about 20% of all our exported food went into the Gaza Strip. So we were giving them free water, we were giving them free electricity, we were even giving them free food all these last 20 years. And that's how they had the excess money to build weapons with, because they didn't pay for anything else. They could have
Yeah.
just built a nice, proper place with, factories and roads and jobs and stuff, but they wasted all that money on weapons, which surprised only people who didn't understand what jihadism is. It's like I always remember the words of Condoleezza Rice. She was the national security advisor for Bush. She was when we had the disengagement plan in 2000. What was it? 7? Yeah, or 5.
Yeah.
So she was like telling us the Israeli citizens, you see, a terrorist organization always aspires to be a legitimate political party. And once the terrorists are democratically elected, they are obligated to their constituents and voters. And then they become a moderates.
Yeah.
That is the level of mental illness within the she has a master's or a doctorate from Harvard.
Yeah.
That's how stupid people who graduate universities in America can become. The
Uh-huh.
Islamists are uh, worried about their democratic voters. That's why they will become moderates. That's the kind of madness that they repeat and base their policy off of. But back to the point, we were talking about hospitals. So yeah, these hospitals are big compounds, and oh my God, what happened here? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
No, my screen just did something really weird. I think I'm being hacked.
You sure?
Uh, yeah, somebody's messing with me. I'll restart. I'll restart my router and we'll reconnect.
You
Give
sure
me
you?
about 3 or 4 minutes.
I don't think you'd be hacked, mate.
Uh Somebody's trying to split my screen with another source. Well,
Might be screen or
you're wasting your time, people. I specifically use this computer only for streaming. Doesn't have anything important. But okay, have it your way. I'll just restart my router, and you'll have to find my new IP. Have fun.
oh man. Are they really after you like that, are they? Christ. See ya, Palmer. Alright, guys, yeah, just coming back in a sec. Oops, it's dropped out again. Right, it'll be back in a minute. Yeah, so a lot's been happening, hasn't it? In New York, the police raided the university where they were. The pro-Palestine march. It seems to be. It seems like they're take no nonsense in America, don't they? Hello, welcome. He's he'll be back in 2 minutes. He's had to sort out his router, Edan. Thank you for subscribing. It's nice to see you here. Thank you. He'll be back in 2 minutes. Yeah, I done a stream on Sunday with him and he was really good. Are you from Israel as well? Hi, Dan. Yeah, we'll just wait for him. He'll be back in a minute. No, I'm not Avi. I'm not Avi. No. Oh, no. Are you messing around? No, I'm not Avi, mate. No, he's an Aussie, mate. He's an Aussie. He's Australian. I'm English, mate. I have met Avi a couple of times, though. I have met him a couple of times. Nice guy. Have you been looking at his latest stuff, Dan? All right. You might have saw that on one of my posts. I reviewed one of his streams. Some of his content the other day. Here comes. Hey. Hello, Alexander. I think you got a friend in here. Hi, Dan. Kiat. Stern.
Don't know him that I'm aware of.
Oh, he's saying nothing but praises about you.
Not uncommon. I've been in the streaming game for 2 or 3 years, so all kinds of people heard about me. Oh, yeah, I talked to him today. He was convincing me to open up an Ethereum account and accept sponsors. Oh, sounds like a nice idea.
What's that?
He was explaining to me about opening up Ethereum account for donations instead of Patreon, which sounds like
Oh,
a good
okay.
idea.
Yeah. Um, yeah, you should open up Buy Me a Coffee. I think it's cheaper to run. I think they only take 7% off. Yeah.
Coffee. Eh.
It's called Buy
Eh,
Me a Coffee. What good?
it's also an option. I mean,
So,
I've never actually ever been paid for doing any of the streaming stuff. I'm mostly as a concerned citizen.
yeah.
Uh,
Um,
because I'm hoping to influence policy by, debunking lies of the nasty people in
yeah.
the government. All these lobbyists and people with interest, or even worse, the commies who pretend like they know something when they don't.
I know. They think they know something, but they don't. What do you think about the latest thing of Candace Owens? She's been
Uh,
having a few run-ins with a few rabbis.
oh, as somebody who both has engineering background and saw the budgetary stuff in the IDF, I
Yeah.
can definitely call you that it would be in Israel's best interest, much best interest, to stop accepting the military aid money from the United States.
Definitely.
Seriously, uh,
Yeah.
what they're doing. The thing within the contract that people don't talk about is that in the contract it says that 75% of that money has to be spent in American companies who determine their own price.
Yeah.
And in Israel, we can both make the same things, we can make better things, and we can make them cheaper. So, because the Americans are paying us to not produce our domestic stuff, they're buying out the competition in a sense. Because in an American equivalent of, we'll call it here, and they say like there's like bachelor's degree in science, 4 years, and then there's a one step lower, which is like a 2 year education. It's
Yeah.
like a half engineer, and here in Israel, you can pay somebody like that about um, $15-20 an hour. Uh, in Britain, I'm guessing you can hardly get a janitor for this kind of pay. And in
Oh,
America, a high level specialist will be at least $50 an hour. So we can make equally or even better quality advanced weaponry for a much cheaper price. So if the Americans did not pay us that $3.5 billion a year, we would
yeah.
bid against them in all sorts of international weapons contracts. And then they use that money to put conditions on what kind of military action we can or cannot do. So, for example, Israel for many years wanted a few refueling planes. It's like a big it's like a passenger plane, but instead of passengers, it's full of fuel, and you can do military refueling for combat jets, which would be
Yeah.
very useful for bombing remote places like Iran. And the Americans insisted not to give us that, even though we were willing to pay for it. And they threatened that they will lower the money that they give us in this military aid if we try to force the issue. So that's an example of how it was harming us to accept their money.
Would you why do you think they take money from them? Because they don't really need it, do they? Do they?
Well, when somebody offers you money, it takes a lot of courage to refuse. And
Yeah.
most of all of our military generals, they go through training in the United States They have business interests, private business interests in the United States. Many of them even have family in the United States, and their loyalty is seriously in question, especially in various scandals. I mean, the whole October 7th thing, we not it's not even a secret. We publicly blame what's called the Wexner Foundation. Les
Yeah.
Wexner was one of Jeffrey Epstein's buddy buds, his main clients. And he set up a fund that was specifically geared for finding the most stupid, mid-level officers, like colonels and majors in the Israeli army, and then making sure that they get a master's degree from Harvard or Columbia or something like that, even if they don't attend even a single lecture or a single test. And in exchange, they go through a special educational program that turns them into lefty libtards. So the deal is they get a lot more money and basically guaranteed a promotion to the highest ranks in exchange for becoming a leftist. So it's what you call elite capture. And all the top generals right now in the Israeli army, the chief of staff, commander of the north, commander of the center, commander of the south, they're all graduates from the Wexner program. And they're doing things in direct opposition to not just the national security interests of the country, but against the direct orders of Netanyahu. And
Yeah.
they get their confidence because the American Foreign Office supports them. They're basically following orders from American Foreign Office and not from the Israeli government.
So, did you say they haven't got a lot of money in the military in Israel? Because they are saying they've got they're saying they've got the best technology out of all the armies in the world. Israel.
Not the best. It's it's a quantity over quality thing. I mean, our F-35 as a model is in certain aspects slightly better than the American F-35, but we have
Yeah.
only like 30 something of them. So it's
Yeah.
not that much. Uh, and we don't have a lot of stuff that other countries do have, like good ballistic missiles. We have
Yeah.
only like 10 or 15 of them, maybe even less. And we obviously don't have extra powerful submarines. We don't have much of a navy. It's more of a coast guard. And I mean, the the equipment that we do use, we either have very few state-of-the-art things that cannot be used extensively, like the newest Merkava tank, and most of the other stuff is just very old stuff. So there's like
Yeah.
maybe 100 or 200 modernized Merkava tanks, and we have like 2,000 tanks in storage from the 70s and 80s, which are not as safe for use in a serious battle.
Yeah.
Because
Well.
we had before this guy leading the army, Herzi. We had before that Kochavi, and he went to all these stupid American schools, and they taught him about the whole, basically the way the U.S. and the British Army operated in Afghanistan, where you combined like small outposts and
Yeah.
then do most of the work in raids and arrests and uh, uh, counterinsurgency stuff. And in his stupidity, he tried to copy that model that failed in Iraq and Afghanistan here in Israel, where instead of a big standardized army, you have a very small and efficient army because it costs less money. And the small and efficient is nice when you are up against, 10, 20, 50, 100 terrorists. But when they come in their thousands across the border, Well, that small force is not enough to handle all of these. And when you don't have basic equipment like machine guns and mortars, we didn't have one single mortar in the entire Gaza Strip area when they attacked. Not even one.
Wow.
And that's the level of failure at the very top of the military government. So even if we have a gigantic budget, most of it actually goes on salaries and pensions and benefits for the officers and all sorts of electronics that we don't really need. And the basic stuff like machine guns, mortars, proper vehicles. We still use Humvees from the 60s. We have the M113s that we got after they broke down in Vietnam. They gave them
Yeah.
to the Israeli army, and we still use them for patrols. That's
Oh,
how bad things are in the part of the army that is not small and high tech. And everybody knew it's a problem. Everybody pointed out it's a problem, but the top generals in the army insisted that it's not a problem because the Americans were telling them that they were right. And
mm.
they sort of created this approach where in the 60s and 70s, the Americans were learning from us. And in the 2000s, we were supposed to learn from them, even though they failed in all the stuff that they were trying.
How
Ah,
would Alexander? How much money do you reckon they take from America?
repeat the question.
How much do you think Israel take from America? How much do you reckon? How much money do
Uh,
they have from them? Do you reckon? Out of
in cash, it's
mm,
$3.8 billion in the official deal,
mm,
and maybe about 500 million in other stuff. I mean, you don't until you have experienced the
yeah,
U.S. Army, you don't understand just how wasteful they are. They literally, when they come for joint training into Israel, we literally mobilize the reserves to pick up after them.
mm,
So it's like they have an American soldier walks around with a rifle and starts shooting, and the rifle jams. He's not gonna try to fix the jam. He'll just throw away the rifle, just leave it in the sand, and pick up a new one from the supply truck.
yeah.
They have a Humvee that gets a flat tire. Instead of fixing the flat tire, they'll leave the Humvee there in the middle of the desert, get themselves a new one. We had cases where I'm not kidding. They just leave a truck loaded with artillery shells, unguarded in the middle of the desert, and just drive away and forget about it. We literally have to mobilize people to pick up weapons after them because they're so wasteful.
Oh God, they are. They're quite sloppy. I mean, I remember it with the Iraq War. Many casualties in British soldiers. Casualties were by the Americans doing things by mistake. Yeah. I'm
And
sure they're not. A lot of them are not trained up properly. To be fair, um,
it's not trained up. It's more of an attitude where they don't have to suffer the consequences for doing something stupid. And you asked about money. So yeah, just the stuff that they leave behind is another couple $100 million because that line from the movie God of War with Nicolas Cage, it really was true. It's cheaper for the Americans to make a new batch of M16s than to pull pull out the ones that they brought with them. So they just leave piles of weapons everywhere they go. Same thing in Afghanistan, where people were surprised that so much military stuff got left. They're used to just dumping stuff where it was and leave. It's normal for them, even if it's Black Hawk helicopters or Hellfire missiles. They'll just leave them and wait to get a new one because they don't have any accountability. But actually, they actually get from Israel more in terms of research and development because, like I said, research and development for American weaponry is very expensive. So what they usually did and still do is they take a
Yeah.
weapon system, they give it to the Israeli army, and then the Israeli army will fix all the mistakes. And fixing the mistakes here in Israel gives the Americans a net profit of at least 5-6 billion a year, just
Yeah.
because we fixed it instead of them paying it themselves. So the Americans actually earn money from giving us their stuff. They don't actually lose money; they earn money from the military aid, which is another reason why instead of doing this to them for free, we should do it for payment and again cancel the military aid, which is significantly more profitable to them than to us.
Yeah. I think yeah, it's quite interesting though, isn't it? I mean, so but basically then they doing it for more to make more money for themselves really. So they're not really doing hi Ted, they're not actually. So when people say, "Oh, America's funding Israel" and blah blah blah, it's not Israel. Not really, but
It's like the
benefited,
speech.
are they? I mean, they are benefited, but America are benefited more, aren't they? Am I right?
It's like there's a clip of Biden from the 1980s that's they're rerunning right now,
Mm,
where it says like if Israel didn't exist, the United States State Department would have had to invent
mm,
one to fulfill their national security priorities. So they actually do benefit a lot more from us than we benefit from them, and
mm.
we get a lot of damage from them and they don't really get a lot of damage from us. So like
No, that's what I was saying.
literally
Yeah,
yesterday they pressured the Israeli central command to forcibly evict a settlement because
yeah,
the Americans didn't approve of where it's located. It's called Chavat Meir, which is also right next to a place where there was a terrorist attack where two Jewish people were killed. It was
mm.
literally like a farming settlement with like,
Okay.
sheep and stuff, and they showed up with 500 soldiers to forcibly remove the Jews who were living there. So when people mention settlements and stuff, then you should be aware that most of the Israeli army in that area is mostly busy impeding the settlement of Judea and Samaria instead of supporting it. They forcibly
Yeah,
evict people who are not going along with the plans that were approved by American State Department.
yeah. Do you know what? Who do you? Does the British fund Israel, or is it just crap? People making it up.
I don't think directly. We have like trade relations and stuff, but
Mm,
British financial sector is not all that big, and the British government is mostly interested in Jordan. It's one of the last, what do you call it, a puppet state that you still have because the Jordanian king is technically part of the British royal family. He has like blue eyes because his mother was British or something. So this is one of the last places where one of the last countries that you manage to directly control,
yeah,
and that's the main British interest in the area. And since they lost the Suez Canal, the last thing they still have left is Jordan, and they very much want Jordan to stay the uh, repressive, autocratic monarchy that they are, and they mostly pressure Israel to maintain good relations with Jordan, even though, as usual, it's against our national interest. We would just, I mean, the people who say that they should establish a Palestinian state. There is a Palestinian state in Jordan. 65% of the people there are Palestinians, but they are ruled by a Hashemite dynasty that is supported by the southern Bedouin minority. So
What
you
is the
have like
percentage of Christians in the Palestinian area, Alexander? Because
mm,
people are saying there's quite a few, isn't there?
somewhere between 10 and 20%. It's hard to get exact figures because the Palestinians always fake their census numbers, but within Israel, it's about 25-30%, and in the what you call West Bank, Judea and Samaria, it's 10-20%, maybe even less, because a lot of them left, especially after the Oslo Accords,
Yeah.
because Christians are not, inherently violent. So the Israeli army never had like reason to go into these villages or limit them with roadblocks or stuff like that. So they were doing fine until the Oslo Accords basically transferred the responsibility to the allegedly Palestinians. And after that, the Christians got very much repressed. I will remember even like Bethlehem, it used to be more than 50% Christian. Now it's like 30% Christians because a lot of them left. Also in Nablus, Shechem, it also used to be a big center for Christian Arabs, and not all of them left.
Mm.
Uh, Many of them actually moved from Judea and Samaria into Israel proper because they usually get through family reunification marriage. So they're allowed to stay, and I mean, if they're Christian, they don't really. The government is not worried about them. The Israeli government is not worried about them. The Palestinian government is very much worried about them because they're not. I mean, like people don't realize that what you call the Palestinian Authority by Mahmoud Abbas, what they are officially, what they call themselves, is neo-Marxists.
Right.
So most of the people in charge are literally trained KGB agents. I mean, I speak Russian, and I heard them talk sometimes to the Russian media. They speak Russian better than me, and yeah. W- as Marxists, they obviously hate Christianity. They allow Islam because it gives them a good excuse to recruit,
Mm.
jihadis. But at their core, they are still Marxists,
Mm.
and they fight any sort of, especially the church, especially the peaceful church. They don't like that. They're all about waging jihad, but with a Marxist tone. So the only fundamental difference between Hamas and Fatah, which is the Palestinian Authority's like army, is
Yeah.
that the Fatah believe in a longer war of propaganda and subversion and changing the global public opinion instead of directly committing terrorist attacks like they used to do 20 years ago. The sort of they're still waging a jihad, but it's a more subtle jihad, more sophisticated, if you will. And that's the people that the US Army is training and arming and funding.
They need to fund themselves a bit better and look after their troops after they come back from the war, and instead of keep giving over money like they do. Do you know what I mean?
We have like as the stupid leftists, they have a formula like that goes along like peace with be answered with peace. So in their stupid brains, as long as you give somebody money and he doesn't do anything,
Yeah.
then he's peaceful. That's like, it's like saying the mafia. Uh, As long, what a nice store you have there. Shame if something happened to it. You should give me gifts every second day of the month to make sure that we stay friends. That sort of thing.
Did you see
And
what was happening in New York over the night? Overnight?
uh, you mean the protests or something else?
Yeah, the police stormed them, didn't they? They actually ran into them and arrested a load. They didn't mess
I heard that
around.
they kidnapped a janitor for some reason. These are actual terrorists. I mean, the difference between a terrorist and a freedom fighter is attacking uninvolved people. I mean, uh, we had like resistance groups when the British directly controlled the area in mandatory Palestine, and we attacked legitimate military targets. We never targeted anybody not on the British mainland, not somebody who's not non-uniformed or not directly affiliated with the government. That's the difference between actual terrorists and the military. Even the big thing that they love blaming Jews about, the King David Hotel, they never mentioned that it was the headquarters of the British secret military police that was
Yeah,
situated in the higher floors of the
yeah,
King David Hotel. And the people who planted the bomb actually warned them half an hour ahead of time to evacuate the place because they put a bomb in the basement. And the British officer in charge of the place, he answered the call, "I'm not taking orders from Jews." And to
oh, great.
bypass his refusal, 10 minutes before the bomb was supposed to go off, the Jews actually threw a grenade near the entrance so that people will get scared and evacuate the hotel. But
Yeah,
the officer in charge actually told the soldiers to bring more people into the hotel instead of evacuating it, knowing that there is a bomb in the basement. They had actually found it and they were trying to disable it after no, before he gave that order. So he knew there is a real bomb in the basement, and instead of evacuating the place, he told everybody to get inside so there would be more casualties.
yeah.
That's the story of the King David Hotel that people like to flaunt as the one good example of alleged Israeli terrorism. But again, this was a military target, and nobody attacked like restaurants or buses or birthday parties or just stab randomly people in the street like happened yesterday in
Yeah.
Ramle. That's terrorism. And the people in New York, they're still not well organized at this point, but they will be. I mean, they started kidnapping, they started taking over buildings, they started
Oh God,
property
this
destruction.
is what they need to do in London: storm into them and snatch them. Yeah, and they seem
But
like. Do you know what? Even I saw a couple of them interview who were actually Jewish kids as well. Do
Uh, like we said in
protesting.
our previous show, if they're part of another religion, they're not Jewish.
Yeah.
They can be all sorts of things, but not Jewish. They're
Oh yeah.
communists. They
Oh yeah.
believe in communism. They
This kid
swear to
said
the
he's
Communist
Jewish, but he
Manifesto.
said I can't keep my mouth shut. What's happening in Israel? And I thought to myself, I think you're just going under a bit of pressure from your college. To be fair, uh,
I mean, a lot of them are either paid or expect to get some sort of job after that. I mean, we have these protests here in Israel too. We have famously Kaplan Street in Tel Aviv, where they have rallies of like thousands of people or leftists, and they fight with the police. We had a
yeah.
policeman injured when they threw a firecracker into his leg, and yeah, we have these people down here too, and the police is like the army, the higher ups are controlled from outside forces and are told not to disperse them with the proper amount of force.
I mean, they have said there was groups outside of New York came in. So, like, I noticed the chants they were doing. It was the same as like the Black Lives Matter chants, yeah. And it's like, it seems like it's like a George Soros movement again. Yeah,
I mean, it's the same networks that never went away. I mean, we had a good example here last year. There was this 8-year-old Ethiopian, so black boy. He jumped into the road, and
yeah,
some 85-year-old grandmother didn't stop the car in time and ran him over and killed him. And because he was black, out of nowhere, that same evening, they had hundreds of protesters that were trying to claim that it's some sort of racism thing, that she ran him over and didn't stop to help. I mean, she's 80 something years old. She probably didn't notice. And he did jump into the road, but they try to stage a thing like it's a cover up. And out of all of a sudden, you see like protest leaders, and they have prepared signs, and they even had the time and money to print shirts for the protest. So they were waiting for something that will look like racism to stage a protest,
yeah.
and they had funding for it. So
Because
these
it
are
brings them in money,
international
doesn't it?
networks of,
Brings them in money. The organisation apparently they made one of them in that organisation. One of the women's earned about 75 million out of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's again for people. I'm actually one of those people who extensively read the communist literature, like Anthony Sutton, Arthur C. Clarke, Aldous Huxley, all the weird British types, Bertrand Russell, all these goofballs. I mean, they want the people who actually want communism is not the poor downtrodden classes. That's what they were sold. The people who actually want communism are the rich, because when you're rich but very stupid or just incompetent, you could lose your money. But if you're in a high place in the Communist Party, then the party will provide you whatever you want, regardless of its price, because the price is paid by the government out of the government stipend. So no matter how stupid and incompetent you are, you will still get money from the government
Mm.
if you're high
Oh,
enough in
you got
society.
a Muslim, a Hamas sympathizer in the chat
Oh,
here.
come on, put him on, put him
Come
on,
on, come
come
on. He
at me,
wants to speak to
come
you.
at
Come
me,
on then. Or is he too IQ for you?
come on.
Or,
Prove that you're a loyal soldier of Allah and wage a jihad in the name of the Ummah. Defeat this kuffar who challenges you.
he won't. He won't actually because he knows
Uh,
you're a bit too intelligent for him. He's a bit out of his depth. He's a bit of a troll. We were friends, and he's turned out to be a bit of a troll, to be fair. But why don't you come on and speak to him? He goes, all these being mouthing off and all that. I've got someone on who could challenge you, each of you, and none of you.
eh, oh well, it's worth a try. I mean,
Yeah.
you are open to to try challenge me with difficult questions, like you
No,
saw
but
from this
he won't
stream.
do it. He's only into low IQ. He just say things like silly, like, "Oh, baby killers and your baby killers and child killers, or everybody's child killers. The Israel flags are baby killers, and that's how low IQ he is."
Um, you want to compare Muslim baby killers with the Israeli baby killers? You're not gonna win that one.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah, so he and he will sit. He will sit with people who will does like Hitler, yeah. And it's quite weird, isn't it? It's quite weird where you've got someone who said he's against racism, but it's okay if anti-Semites come in and back his calls, yeah. But he doesn't come on the panel, so move on. He's irrelevant. Yeah, he's too low IQ. Yeah.
Mm, I don't really go into the whole IQ thing. Just because somebody is less smart does not
No,
actually
I'm
mean
just
they're
saying. I'm
wrong.
just saying. He's just a more of a troll.
Simpleton would be the word.
Okay.
He's a simpleton swayed by
Yeah,
simplistic
yeah,
explanations, and it's always easier to just blame everything on the Jews instead of,
yeah,
checking out what actually happens.
yeah. Well, you could see he's anti-Semitic, so where he says, "Look at the state of the extremists." So he's being very, very, very anti-Semitic to you because of the way you
So
look.
I have a bad haircut, which proves that I'm not married. That's
Mm,
about it. And
yeah. But
yeah.
do hit the link, Ghost. But I don't think you will because he's too high.
How do we wake the West realize it's time to move away from Western progressive ways? Uh, I homeschooling, teaching the books of the actual enemy, lecturing about George Orwell stuff. I mean, people like they call it for some reason a conspiracy when all the communists, Saul Alinsky types, they just say out in the open what they're gonna do, and people just don't bother reading a 1,000-page book, so it's a secret to them somehow. It's like when the whole COVID thing started. I mean, I saw Event 201 a couple months before, so I know it was a scam just because I actually bothered to read what they were planning. And everybody else, some people are still like, no, the vaccine works great. I have to get my 11th booster. I have to keep wearing a mask. And I was one of the people who knew that this was obviously a scam, and I showed them like, here, look at the document from the Johns Hopkins. Here, look at their conference from November 2020. No, November 2019. And they're like, no, I don't want to read that. I'll just believe whatever is shown on the news. And now it's not just the news; it's the teachers in school. They have like especially in America. I don't know how's it in Britain, but they have like transgender teachers in class teaching children. Or the horror of drag queen story time. They had one place here in Israel that tried that, and even the secularists shut that down. So we still have some values, but it's like with these leftist protesters. It's
Yeah,
uh, it's a pre-planned. They're going along a plan that's been 200 years in the making, focused obviously in Britain. All these Darwin, Wedgwood, all these Thomas Malthus types. Where Thomas Malthus was 300 years ago. They had another famine in Ireland, as usual, and he said maybe we'll just kill a lot of Irish, and then there will be more food left. And
yeah,
it's called A Modest Proposal, I think. And he wrote that as a joke, but some people were serious, like, yeah, let's kill a lot of people so there won't need as much food. Uh, and they turn it into a plan. They call it socialism or social democracy or social
yeah,
progressivism or social liberalism. It's all the same thing. Where instead of uh, creating more, useful products, we just reduce the amount of people who use those products. And
mm,
the less people there are, the easier they are to control. That's the
yeah.
model going off in general, and that's why they're like bringing in the opposite of people who adhere to the model, because the Muslims, as you know, like to have a lot of children, or all the immigrants, Pakistanis, Hindus, Africans, they all want to have a lot of children. But you're British, you're advertised that having no children at all is better for the climate, because climate change is the real danger. And they they managed to maintain this cognitive dissonance for decades. I don't know how,
Yeah.
but they do, and it will eventually come to a point of failure. And whether the let's call them native Britons win out, they'll have to clean up the country through concentration camps, or the Muslims win and they will clean up the uh, ethnically British population with concentration camps. But no matter who wins, the solution will have to be concentration camps, which again the British government invented during the Boer War in South Africa,
Yeah.
and they want to come back to that
Well,
in the
you on
19th.
about suggesting like what they got in America, like when they get the terrorists. Is it something they come? Um, you're on about them, Guantanamo Bay or something? Is it? You know, the big prison camp, like when they catch the terrorists, they put them in a secure prison, don't they? And it's called.
No, like that's the stupid part. Most of the people in that place are innocent. They hold them in Guantanamo Bay because they don't have any serious evidence. They just grab
Yeah.
whoever they can and torture them, hoping to get something out of them. So a lot of the people in there are actually innocent. That's
Mm,
the sad part. The real serious place where the actual terrorists are going, it's usually black sites in third countries like Egypt or Morocco or Romania, or they have the place in Diego Garcia where
mm,
it's an island of the Pacific, not the Pacific, in the Indian Ocean. It's south of Sri Lanka. It's in
yeah.
the middle of nothing, and they have these things where they torture somebody on a plane that goes around in the sky, and when they decided they pulled the enough information of somebody, they just throw them out into the ocean from 10 kilometers height, so there's nothing left. That's where the real terrorists go. And all the people that detained in Guantanamo Bay, they're like they're usually the fake terrorists, where they hold them because they don't have a better thing to do. They're not actually guilty, so killing them will look bad, and they had enough torture for them that they think they might still be worth something. So a lot of people from Guantanamo Bay eventually get released.
Mm.
That's the stupid part.
So, well, what do you mean, like concentration camps? Then,
Like physical
Alexander.
concentration camps of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of people, like they had in the Boer War. The uh, what they were Dutch from Holland in the Natal, Pretoria. So in South Africa, you had the area where they discovered a lot of gold and diamonds, and
Yeah.
they were the Orange Free State, and the British wanted to take them over, but the British were used to fighting against a force that will, form into an army, and then the British army will fight with the enemy's army, and then they can defeat them. But instead they invented the what's called the commando concept, which is just a bunch of people on a horse running around and shooting at British columns marching, and they couldn't defeat them because they would just run off and hide. So what they did is just gather the native Dutch population. So again, the white people, they put them in these concentration camps, so the farmers could not support the resistance to the British soldiers with food, and they just left them there to starve. And one of the reasons that the Boer War ended is because British newspapers walked into these camps and they had a photograph of some starving 5-year-old girl, and they showed that this is what the British policy is doing for money. And there was a public outcry in Britain, and that's how the war sort of stopped. But the model of concentration camps was then adopted later in, of course, Europe. They had them mainly by the Germans, but to a lesser extent in Yugoslavia and in Greece. In Greece, they straight up starved everybody. They didn't even bother with the
Yeah.
concentration.
Are you on about concentration camps just for like Hamas fighters or for
The overwhelming consensus in Israel is that the Gaza Strip as a city can,
yeah
as a group of Palestinian cities, cannot continue to exist. We will have to take at least half their territory, at least the northern half, and dismantle the whole thing. So, like, I mean, we had literally last year, there was a very, very ancient conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan that goes back to like 1500 years.
yeah
They're arguing over a small territory. It's like um, half the size of Wales. But these are like ancient people that lived there. It's not like Palestinians who appeared in 150 years ago. The Armenians lived there since prehistoric times. The Azeris been there since Roman times, and they had a conflict over that. And the Azeri army is significantly more powerful because they had oil. So they conquered the area and just forced out everybody who was not ethnically Azeri, and the world sort of accepted that, and it's obviously ended the conflict. The problem is that the Palestinians are so well known for being terrorists that nobody, not the Egyptians, not the Syrians, nobody wants them. I mean, I fully advocate to put them all in Syria. I heard there's a lot of empty space in there for settlement.
how about put them in Dubai somewhere like that, eh?
Nah, Dubai is overcrowded. They don't have water. They don't have farming land. But in
What
Syria, you
really
have
in
all that
Dubai?
stuff. I heard Assad is very, very experienced dealing with Palestinians. He killed only like 100,000 of them, so he can handle them. They have these job opportunities, empty spaces, good
Well,
farmland, plenty
this
of
is what I
grain.
don't understand. Why, right? This is what I can't understand. Right? You got people coming on boats, on dinghies over to this country, right? And you got countries like Saudi and that have got plenty of room, a lot of jobs for them to work as, and they just won't take them in. But why won't they take them in? I don't
Because
understand that.
unlike you stupid Brits, they realize that these foreign migrants are dangerous.
Yeah,
They commit terrorism, they do kidnapping, they do murders and rapes and robberies and organized crime and drugs and all that stuff. So they know that these guys are bad, so that's why they don't want them.
yeah. They're not silly, are they?
And they're not silly, they're following a plan. It's called the Caligari plan. There was this half Austrian, half Japanese nobleman. It was like a couple of years before World War One. So the Austro-Hungarian Empire was obviously about to fall apart at any moment because it's composed of a lot of different nationalities who don't have any sort of like core identity of loyalty to the Austrian emperor. And his solution was that instead of trying to, provide them a better quality of life, they'll just flood all of Europe with the foreign immigrants from Asia and Africa. And when everybody is mixed race, then they don't have any sort of nationalistic loyalty because they don't understand who they are themselves. And that way, the only loyalty they could have is to the flag and not to an ethnic group or even a religion, because they are themselves confused about their own identity. And that's what you see with all the leftists in Britain, in America, where people don't have a. I mean, people who are part of the, like in Britain, you had the clans, the tribal system, where you know that you're part of this tribe. You know what are your values, what are your religious values, your moral values. In the in the more cohesive places like here in the Middle East, you can by somebody's face recognize which tribal group they are from. So the people don't have like an identity crisis when they grow up, and that's why they are less prone to adopting socialist ideology, where everybody has to be treated equally. Because when you know exactly who and what you are, you don't need somebody else like the government to tell you who and what you are, and
Yeah.
you have the confidence to refuse their whatever stupid ideas because you feel like you're part of the group and not an individual. But when you feel like you're a lone individual and it's just you and the state, you can't even trust your neighbor to back you up in a street fight, then the government has a lot more power over the single person.
It's so. Uh, what I was going to say. So in Israel itself, what is there any problems like so? They say, oh, what gets me with that religion? They always say they don't think of drugs.
We have
Um,
plenty of drugs here in Israel, smuggled through the Egyptian and Lebanese border mostly, because, like in your country, the real power behind the criminal organization is, again, the government.
yeah. But
So drugs are plentiful here.
what I'm trying to say is they say blah blah blah. They don't drink, they don't do drugs, and that, but they're the
Oh.
biggest importers of heroin, and they grow it. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean?
No, Muslims they also do drugs to a lesser extent, but they have plenty of drug addicts in their community too. They
Have they?
had this, yeah, they had this stuff in here called Nice Guy, where they mixed horse tranquilizer with
Oh, there's
acetone and high power weed.
they call that GBH here, grievous bodily harm. They call it here. They call that.
I don't know. I've never done any sort of serious drug. I'm
Yeah.
I I'm the kind of person who has abnormal side effects even to like coffee. So I even avoid that. So I but from my younger years, people said that getting drugs, especially weed, is very easy and relatively cheap, and a lot
What's
of
the
people.
laws in Israel for it? Is there a stiff penalty or?
They sort of stopped bothering to punish for using
But
marijuana about 2 or 3 years ago. So it's not technically legal, but they stopped just punishing for it.
yeah, I think it's no. I think it's pointless punishing people to smoke that. Something what comes out of the ground, isn't it? I mean, you know, I
I
think they.
mean, it's you see, when you have a solution that actually fixes the problem, then you can no longer make a profit from keep selling a different solution that doesn't fix the problem. You know what I mean? So if somebody has um, like I don't know how old are you, but I'm getting to the age where I start having like back pain and stuff, and there's actually a lot of very easy exercises where if when you have pain in a specific place, there's usually like a physical exercise that will fix it.
Yeah.
And instead of going to a physical therapist who will check out where it's hurting and recommend like a 5 minute a day exercise regime that'll fix the problem within 2 weeks, they'll
Yeah.
put you on painkillers and get you addicted to pills, and you'll pay hundreds of pounds a month over something that could have been fixed for free with easy exercise. Like I do a lot of sitting, so I started having lower back pains,
Yeah.
and I did the research, and so actually the most common reason for pain in the lower back or mid back is actually in the upper back. You have like these little muscles like
Mm-hmm.
around here. I don't know if you see in the camera, like around here.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
call the rhomboids, and the they are in charge of keeping your back straight. And so you have powerful muscles in the upper back and powerful muscles in the lower back, but weak muscles in the middle, and that makes your back arch. And where there is an imbalance, the to keep the head straight, your back tries to compensate for it by bending either in the upper area or the lower area, and that's where you get the back pain. So the place where it hurts is not the place that's causing the problem. And the solution, oh, I'll just show it right here. Uh, so you just have to go like this. Like literally do that for 2 minutes a day. It costs nothing, doesn't take any time or equipment, and
Yeah.
it will fix your back pain. It worked for me. Just yeah, and I didn't need any pills or nothing like that. Same thing with I had problems with my teeth, and I discovered that I just need to supplement with the iodine droplets, and literally for I went from having a cavity filled like once a year to having none for 10 years, and I still eat like chocolate and ice cream and stuff like that, and I don't have any problems. The solution was not the toothpaste that
Mm.
we are being sold that doesn't actually work, but just adding iodine so that the teeth can repair themselves. I'm not
Alexander,
even sure.
I was
Yeah.
going to ask you. There was an issue, wasn't there, of like was it they built a mosque? They built mosques underneath the temples of the synagogues. Am I right?
What?
Underground,
Sound.
the underground. They done a like underground mosques in Israel under the Holy Land of one of the synagogues. Am I right?
A mosque under a synagogue?
They built something under the Holy Land or something, and it's like a tunnel.
I don't know what you mean.
Oh, okay. Oh, they
You
use them
mean
for
under the
terror.
Temple Mount that they have tunnels?
Oh, sorry, they use yeah. I mean terror tunnels. Sorry.
Oh, the
Yeah,
jihadis they dug tunnels from Gaza and from Lebanon into Israel. Yeah, so they could
yeah.
do a
And they
kidnapping.
found a couple of them under the
Not a
under.
couple, more than 100.
Yeah,
It's their main in Gaza. The main route for bringing in stuff was digging tunnels between the Gaza and the Egyptian border. So they just used the same skill set to build tunnels from Gaza into Israel, and they never got a chance to properly use them for some reason. But they had hundreds of them. I mean, we keep finding new ones. I mean, even now during this war, they kept digging.
yeah.
So yeah, they're very proficient at tunneling. people who don't have experience with it, they don't realize just how big a tunnel can be made with hand tools. Not Hamas specifically, but when there were the Syrian rebels like ISIS in Syria, they would dig a tunnel big enough to fit a 10-ton truck through it with the hand tools. They would dig something like that in
Christ.
a couple months. So yeah, it could be done, especially around Gaza. It's soft soil. It's mostly sandstone, so you can very easily dig through it. And they even used concrete for the frame for the upper arching. And yeah, they managed to dig the tunnels very well. And there's a bigger like a scam that our military industrial complex is running against the government, where they pretend that it's hard to find the tunnels when it's a device like literally the size of a beer pint. It measures the what you call it. You know what flux is?
No, can you tell us?
It's a term in physics. So it basically measures how the magnetic field of the Earth is traveling from like the center. And when you have a cavity, like a tunnel or or a vertical shaft, it will
Yeah,
resonate through it, and you can pick that up. It's a device that costs literally $2 or $3,000. It's the size of a beer pint, and you could just have one of them just scan all over the border, but the Israeli army pretends that these things don't exist, so they would have an excuse to spend $1 billion with a B dollars to build an underground obstacle. And then at the business time, it turns out that the underground obstacle was not deep enough, and they just dug under it.
yeah.
And they knew that they were digging under it, and they didn't care. Why? Because when it turns out that the underground obstacle was not deep enough, instead of buying this one piece of kit that will fix the problem, they were gonna spend another $1 billion to dig an even deeper uh, underground obstacle. Why? Because they are scamming our government, and nobody's stopping them because they're evil and stupid and both and traitors.
Well, I'm going to ask you something crazy. So, how many mosques do you reckon there is in Israel, and how many is it out of the Palestine area?
Uh, I don't know, quite a lot. I mean, I live not far from a Muslim village called Tuba Zangiria, and they have like 3 or 4 mosques over 20,000 people. They're like big mosques, but uh, I, it's not. I hear in Britain they try to build a mosque in every street, and they don't really need that many. They just want to maintain what you call it, like a real
Dominance.
estate grab. So
Yeah,
that
yeah, this is what they're doing here. Um, I think it's not about worship, it's about real estate and land. Yeah,
yeah, because once you
yeah.
control it, it's hard to get the government to take it away from you, even if you're like caught in some sort of
Mm.
money scheme or something like that. They could confiscate other stuff, but the government wouldn't be brave enough to confiscate the land where a mosque is already being built.
Mm. But in this country, though, it is the fastest growing religion. To be fair, people are converting to it quite highly in this country as well.
Yeah, like I was saying in the last show, there's a lot of people who secretly want to be told what to do,
Yeah.
and in a very liberal society like you create in Britain, people feel like lost without a sense of direction, and then when somebody shows up and tells them what to do, they enjoy it because they're stupid. And it's childishness. People just want somebody to come and fix all their problems instead of handling them themselves. it's again the education system or the parenting where people were not raised to deal with their own issues.
Well,
They
I
wait
think
for
in
somebody
here,
else to do
I
it.
think in this country they convert in prison, um,
Yeah, prison is
because they
always
get better privileges if they convert to it. Yeah. Uh,
Oh, I have a funny army story. So we have in the army, if you declare yourself religious, then you get an extra hour of sleep, so you have time for praying. So a
mm,
lot of a lot of Israeli soldiers suddenly become religious within in the basic training, so they can sleep longer. Uh, I actually had a Christian with me in basic training, and he sort of he didn't go into the synagogue, but he was praying right outside of it. I don't know what sort of arrangement they gave him, but he got the same praying privileges as the Jews and
mm.
the rather Druzian, I think. Yeah, so
Will
a
there
lot of
be?
people turn
You, but,
religious when it
but
benefits
there
them.
must be some people. When I went to Israel ages ago, it was a while ago. Surely there is Muslims and Jews are living together in some places in Israel, aren't they? Are
You
they
mean in the same street or in the same house?
in the same street? You know, I mean,
Yeah,
they,
we
they,
have a few. We have a few mixed towns like Acre, Akko,
mm,
Maalot, Ramle, around Yafo, in Jerusalem, obviously. But yeah, it does happen. But it's. I mean, when I was in college, I had Muslim roommates because I didn't register early enough for the board.
yeah,
So yeah, I was living next door to them.
and they just
Like
kind
not
of
next door, like in the same apartment, in different rooms.
Hafia. All right. Yeah, I watch a bit of Hafia, Tel Aviv football actually. Mm.
Hafia, uh, Haifa, I think you mean.
Yeah, Hafa. Is that who he's on about in the chat? Haifa, Havaya, Tel Aviv.
Haifa.
Yeah.
The British left us a very big refinery.
Mm.
When the British took over after World War I, they built a pipeline from Kuwait all the way to Israel. And in Haifa, they built a military port, and right next to it, an oil refinery. And we still use that oil refinery today. It's really helping us.
Mm.
And the pipe is also still there. So if there's ever a peace with Iraq and Kuwait, we can dramatically reduce the price of oil by just
I
reactivating the
didn't think they
pipeline.
were at with Kuwait because I didn't think Kuwait would want to get involved. To be fair, but what I was going to say to you was, oh God, I've forgotten what I was going to say now.
You were asking about mixed cities. So yeah, in Haifa we also have a lot of
Yeah,
Arabs who live
well,
in
I
there.
was saying that, like somebody saying, uh, somebody said it was actually a Muslim guy said this. He goes, "It's not genocide over there. It's not even a war there. It's like a tip." And this is a Muslim guy said that. I was listening to it this morning, and he said it's not
Yeah,
a genocide because he goes, "They if it was a genocide." How comes they in some towns Muslims and Jews are shopping in the same supermarket? If that happened in
obviously.
Iraq or anywhere else, it wouldn't happen. Yeah. So they're saying
Yeah,
it's not a genocide. He's saying it's not a genocide. You know.
it's a tribal war. I mean,
Mm,
the the concept of nation states never existed in the Middle East. It's you Europeans invented this model to try to understand what's going on. But
mm,
the whole Middle East, it never existed as nation state. There is no Iraqi people, there is no Iranian people, there is no Afghan people, there is no Syrian people. It's stuff that the British and French made up to draw a line on a map, but it never existed in the reality of the region. So in the
Yeah.
same way, we have the conflict we have with Hamas is with specific tribes of Muslims in the area of Gaza who turned into jihadis, where we have tribes of Muslims who are not jihadis, and we have a lot of Muslim Bedouin tribes who are supportive of Israel, and they have full, even better than full Israeli citizenship because they don't pay land taxes. So it's not a conflict between two nations with two flags, and it's definitely not a genocide. It's a war that is being waged within a civilian area.
Yeah, because they're
So
pushing
there's a
the
lot of
narrative. It's
concern.
a big genocide thing, and I just think,
Had it been a genocide, you would have seen a hell of a lot more than what what
mm,
they claim. 10,000 people dead in half a year.
and
That's
I
not
mean,
how
we
genocide
would be
works.
hearing people being killed every day as well if it was a genocide. You know what I mean? If it was a
No, a
genocide, it
genocide.
would.
The way a genocide looks like is October 7 when they show up and they slaughter anybody they can find.
Yeah.
That's genocide. That's how genocide looks like. That's how genocide looked like the last one in Europe, in Yugoslavia in the 90s,
Oh
in
God,
Chechnya.
God,
That's real genocide where
that
they
was
pack up
brutal.
people in buses and slaughter them. Or the Russians in Chechnya, they would mark a square on a map and kill every living thing in it. They didn't even spare the dogs and cats. That's actual genocide.
Oh God,
This is just
that was absolutely awful.
yeah.
But no one never demonstrated about that though. Got on demos about that.
If it doesn't have Jews, it's not interesting enough for the people who hate Jews to pay for the
Yeah.
demonstration. I mean, again, you had like literally last year the Muslim Azerbaijanis throwing out at least 200,000 Christian
Check the
Armenians.
VRP.
Nobody
All
cared.
right, we're
Nobody
being
cared.
told in this country 35,000 are dead, not 10,000. That's what he's saying.
I mean, it's hard to have like official numbers because
Yeah,
most of the killing is done by airdropped bombs, so there's not even a body left, or they're like in the rubble of a building, so nobody really knows how many people died.
yeah,
And you have like deaths from disease and stuff, and you don't really have a, it's not like where you get a birth not a birth, a death certificate. When you die in a hospital and get put in a morgue and buried in a specific place. They just, the bodies that they do find, they just wrapped in nylon and bury in the sand or something.
See,
So
I just don't believe what they give out. The
obviously they're
statistics
lying.
with them. Um, they would do anything for their agendas, won't they? Just to say, you know, I just don't get it right. Israel gets attacked, and then everybody demonstrates against them, right? Like to say, oh, it's not real. The attack wasn't real, and it's a conspiracy. It was done on purpose, and blah
It was
blah.
a conspiracy and it was done on purpose, and the dead people are actually dead.
No, I
It's
mean,
not a
no,
contradiction.
they're saying the Israel government let it happen on purpose.
Yes, these elements within the Israeli government let it happen on purpose because they were American spies. Yes, they are American spies. They're still there. The same way that the Americans let Pearl Harbor happen and the British let Dunkirk happen. It was a conspiracy by high level officers and government officials to intentionally lose because that was their interest. Yeah, these things happen. The same thing that the September 11 attacks. They knew all about it and they let it happen. Uh,
I don't think. I don't think. I just think they just got caught unguarded. I just thought they laxed it. It's been such a ceasefire for a little while now, and I just think it's a bit lax. I do.
what's ceasefire?
Sorry.
No, You mean the October 7th attack?
Yeah. But the people are
No,
blaming.
man. They
They're
knew
saying Israel knew it was going to happen. They done it on purpose. Let them do it
they
on purpose.
knew it was gonna happen. They had the alerts. They actually had a high level meeting between the generals 2 hours before the attack was launched. That they had a lot of indications, like simultaneously 2,000 Hamas militants put Israeli SIM card
Yeah,
on their
but he
phone.
wouldn't put his own people at risk and have them killed, would he?
What?
The president wouldn't have his own people killed, would he?
First of all, I'm not sure. Second, he didn't know. The generals decided just not to tell him. They had a meeting at 4 in the
So there
morning.
you go, Grateful Ad. He's saying the army might be incompetent, but not the government. Yeah, so that's
No,
what I was.
the government is incompetent in a different way. It's again, it's like in the 1973 war. They had suspicions that the attack will happen. They did some partial preparations, but Moshe Dayan was an American spy, and the whole thing with the coordination between Dayan and Kissinger. The plan was, I mean, it's a well-known conspiracy, not 100% confirmed, but 95% confirmed that the what Kissinger set up is that he wanted to have to let the Egyptians have a minor victory. I mean, they literally still celebrate every year that they conquered the Bar Lev fortification line. It had like 600 soldiers getting attacked by 100,000 special forces commandos who trained for this attack for 3 years. And even when 100,000 soldiers attacked 600, they conquered only 17 out of the 20 forts. Two of them lasted for 2 days, and the northernmost was not conquered at all. They had like 25 guys and one tank beat off 700 soldiers and 20 tanks, and they lasted there for 5 days until they got relieved. So even when they were set up to lose, not everybody lost, and the suspicion is that it's the same way here. The Americans really want to establish a Palestinian state, and the idea was that if they kidnap hundreds of Israelis, they will get the government to release most of the terrorists in our prisons because we foolishly don't enact the death penalty on Nazis like we should. And they thought that out of that crisis, where thousands of terrorists are released, they could have a peaceful settlement with the Palestinians having the upper hand in the negotiation, and they could have open borders and a port and an airport. And they what they didn't they underestimated the maniacal bloodlust of the Muslims. So each Muslim who crossed the border from Gaza into Israel, they were promised just bring one Jew alive. We will give you a free house. We will give you $30,000, which is like 10-year salary in Gaza. We will name a street after you. Just bring one alive Jew back into Gaza, and they couldn't help themselves. They just murdered almost every Jew they could see. That's why they had only like
Well, there's no
100
hostages.
estimates
There's
when they
no
could have had
hostages.
1,000. So I think there really was a stand down and a conspiracy to let it happen, and it got out of hand because they underestimated how brutal the Muslims would be, and because they were so genocidal, even the not all, but almost every stupid libtard Israeli leftist realized that yes, they really do want to kill me, and so we really do have to fight them and conquer them and finish off Hamas.
Yeah.
And that did not fit into the American plans, and now they're doing the whole delaying action where they don't want us to conquer the southern half of Gaza after we conquer the northern half, because They wanted to establish a Palestinian state, not have the Israelis reconquer the territory.
Well, I mean, they're definitely them hostages are not alive. They killed them right away. I'm telling you now, they're not alive.
There might be a few that still are because they don't keep them all in one place. They have
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah, but you're
again like
telling me the powerful of the army of Israel couldn't go and find them and get them back? I mean, is that the people of Israel are a little bit fed up with and thinking they're not doing enough to get them back?
I mean, the people of Israel are constantly pressuring the government to go in there, and the Americans are pressuring
Yeah.
us not to go in there, and that's the
Yeah.
balance. And if there even was a situation, it was about a month ago, where it got published in the newspapers, where the Netanyahu, the prime minister,
I
direct
think he's a nutcase. I think he's a lunatic.
he directly ordered the army to go into the south, and the army chief of staff refused because he said there is no political backing from the Americans for such a move. And instead
So,
of
so America are
dismissing him,
controlling things then.
yeah, it's not really. I mean, I talked to the people don't know. I I appear in a weekly panel about military stuff for about 2 years, and I got to talk to with all sorts of like generals and high-ranking
Yeah.
military researchers. And Bibi, even way back in 2007, straight up told them, "I cannot force the army to change or to do things that are in our national interests because they don't listen to me. They do their own thing, or they do what the Americans ask." So that was back then, and now it's even worse. And yeah, we have a serious crisis where the army is disloyal to the government, and
Yeah.
he's not strong enough to force them out.
God, and I thought he would be strong enough to control them. You
No,
know, and wouldn't
no,
let them know.
no, 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 no. No, he is not. We're under a we have like a not at all secret alliance between the leftist forces. So the left-right balance in the let's call them Jewish sector of the population is about 60-40 to the right, and it's
Yeah.
obviously increasing because the leftists don't have any kids because of climate change. And the way the leftists maintain their grip on power is a not secret alliance between leftist generals, high ranking generals in the army, and the leftist Supreme Court. So and of course, the leftist media and leftist police. So they all support each other in their little gang to create a situation where even if the government is right wing and has been right wing for a good 20 years, with minor exceptions for a few months. Even if the government itself is right wing, the real power is still within left wing hands. And so again, the prime minister
Yeah, but
orders.
would you say the government is right wing? Because to be right wing is to be against
Effectively,
everyone.
no. Uh, Effectively, no. I mean, it's staffed mostly by followed because we have what you call it. Senior clerks or administrators. I mean, from the TV, I got the impression that in Britain, it's common that if somebody in a high level government job is a total failure, then he resigns. In Israel, they don't resign, they stay. They just stay and keep staying, and nobody can force them out. And it's just compounding stupidity. And if somebody does try to remove them, then the Supreme Court will step in or the police will step in and make sure they keep their job because they're of the right political party. So
Do
we,
you think he'd rather not be president? Do
uh, the
you reckon
problem
he?
is we don't have a good replacement for him. It's like we don't have anyone a better candidate to replace him at the moment. That's the problem.
I
And there's
mean,
no
what do
somebody.
you think of him? What do you think of him as a whole, Alexander? Like,
I never voted for him, and I never will. I will not forget the when he brought in the Sudanese and Eritreans some 20 years ago, and he allowed the gun runners to smuggle them into the country, and he refused to deport them because the UN said so. We were the test case for the boat migrants.
yeah,
In that case, it was desert migrants, and because he backed down to the leftist Supreme Court and the leftist UN, he allowed the problem to get worse, and eventually that problem was copied into Europe with the
well,
migrants.
I think the UN's had it now, and it with all their misdoings and everything. Now, the way they've been abusing
I mean,
children over
the
there.
people are awake to their crimes, but they still don't properly see a way to fight them. That's the form. I mean, even after COVID, some people still trust these international groups,
Mm.
and you
Me
cannot tell.
personally, Alexander, I want the war to stop because it's just too many innocent people dying. Yeah, I mean youngsters, children, and I think for Israel, it's a shame because this could turn into another world war. Because what I'm saying is, Israel is a beautiful country. I'm sure there could be a way to have a bit of peace.
No, this is the kind of this is not a European war where we can just cede some territory to one way or the other and have a lasting peace. No, this is an older type of war, tribal warfare, where
So you're saying
somebody's
it's like
gonna
a
lose out and somebody has to be a clear winner.
so really it's like a holy faith war then, yeah?
Not so much holy faith. This is a basic war on. It's ideological. I mean, they believe in the Quran. The Quran says that any territory that was once ruled by Muslims must be reconquered. The same way that they have designs on all of Spain for they want to reconquer any area, and anyone who is an infidel deserves to get the sword, Dar al
Yeah,
Harb and Dar al Salam, and they will keep fighting us. I mean, the the liberal, supposedly Americans, have been fighting against the Islamic insurgency in the Philippines for 125 years straight, with the exception of the Japanese occupation, who also had to fight them. So uh, it's inherent within Islam to have insurgency, and it's not going to go away unless we remove the Muslims and have only the Christians and Druzians and a few other minor groups like Samaritans or Baha'i. So as long as Islam exists, there will be an insurgency that it causes because it's inherent within
I
the
mean, are,
teachings.
are you on about unless they move Hamas, or are you saying all Muslims, Alexander?
Again, Hamas. It's hard for Europeans to understand. It's not like a political party where you just switch your vote. It's a
No.
group of tribes. It's a tribal coalition that supports the Hamas cause, and it's part of the larger group of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is an organization. Uh, I would compare it to the Catholic Church in terms of size, and
Yeah,
definitely resources.
yeah, no, yeah. So you think now they saying people use this conspiracy? Israel created Hamas. America
Yes,
and
yes.
Israel did.
In the same way that the British Lord Milner created the Russian Communist Party. and Rockefeller financed the Chinese Communist Party. You create the enemy that you intend to fight. Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
What do you think
The
of the Rothschilds, Alexander?
like I said, they cannot be Jewish because they're part of a different religion. Maybe I'll
Is it-
just expand the previous question about Hamas. So,
Yeah,
like I said, Fatah were and are Marxist. They're officially communist. They were officially supported by the
yeah,
Soviet Union. And in the stupid head of the academic leftists, namely a creature named Chaim Assa, who I love to laugh at every chance I get. Excuse me, Dr. Professor Chaim Assa, leader of the Israeli National Institute of War Games in the Tel Aviv
yeah.
University, His Royal Highness. That stupid piece of crap had the bright idea that if instead of the communist terrorist organization, we create an opposing Islamist terrorist organization, then it will, split the vote of sorts and create two rival camps. And that way we will weaken, we will use, the saying was that we will use Hamas to fight Fatah without it going through the Israeli Supreme Court or the human rights organization. So they will do the job for us. And it obviously backfired because the Islamist terrorist organization proved to be much more powerful than the communist terrorist organization.
Yeah.
And they both still exist and they both still commit attacks against Israel, with the Islamist organization obviously becoming significantly more powerful.
I
Oh,
think
also for British, we should talk about a little about how Hamas was actually formed. It was created by a guy named Ahmed Yassin. He was paralyzed, wheelchair bound, and Hamas originally started as a charity organization. They
I'm
showed
okay.
they
All
showed
right.
themselves as what's the word, zakat. Yeah, I think it's zakat, where they gathered the donations throughout the Islamic world to, all the humanitarian stuff that leftists love, schools and hospitals and all that. And they used the money collection infrastructure to collect money for weapons. And once they had enough money and enough weapons, they started their own terrorist campaign.
I'm
So
okay.
the same networks that you have in Britain for Islamic charities will very, very quickly turn into Islamic terrorist organization, because once you have the money flow, a stable money flow, and you have the organizational structure to submit orders for a charity, you will have the same or infrastructure to submit orders for terrorist attacks. It's coming. I'm sure your security service are aware of that and are fighting that every day, but it's definitely coming your way too.
I
Give it a couple of years.
So it's quite more complex, isn't it? Uh, and
I mean, the formula is the same. Leftist stupidity allows Islamic entrenchment. The implementation is complicated, but the formula is very
what I'm
simple.
trying to say, like in this country, I believe people just don't know enough what is going on. Yeah, um, they're too.
Preoccupied?
They are too misinformation. That it's an easy thing to point the finger. Israel, Israel, Israel. Like they do with Russia. Like they do with Russia, right? We're brought up in this country to hate Russia. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Russia's to blame.
British
You've got to
hating
be careful.
Russia is a centuries old tradition. I still haven't heard one good explanation why you launched the Crimean War, but you were taught since the 17th century to hate Russia. Why? Don't know why, but let's hate Russia. It's far away and it's
Yeah.
big, so let's hate them.
Yeah. That's what they do. And it's a bit of an agenda, isn't it? Like, so I was when I was growing up, when I was younger, you would just hear on the news, anti-Russia this, anti-Russia that, right? And then now it's the same thing with the Israel thing, isn't it? Be anti, but no, and not letting
Yeah,
people know.
I mean, communism is legitimately evil, but they stopped being communist a good 20, 30 years ago, officially.
Yeah,
So,
80s, wasn't it? 80s, wasn't it? Yeah,
yeah, they made the switch in 91.
yeah.
But, I mean, Russia is doing a lot of bad things right now in Ukraine, but they're at least trying to be moderate in terms of
Yeah,
how
because
bad.
it's gone really quiet in the news over here. There's no, you don't
That's
hear
because the
nothing.
Ukrainians are losing really bad, like really, really bad
Yeah, but this has
in the
been a
last
good
month.
year now. We haven't heard nothing from the Ukraine and the Russian war. I mean, what's going on?
Oh, the simple answer is that the Ukrainians ran out of soldiers and out of money. And
Okay.
the Russians intentionally had a strategy where they just if they give it enough time, the Western governments will decide that it's not worth the investing money because they know that the Ukrainians will steal whatever you send them.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. I think the Russians are more to be feared than any other. Well, one of the top three countries to be feared.
I mean, what do you define as fear? The
Well,
Russians are not
I
gonna
mean,
come over and
I think they're capable of ending the world.
yeah, that's obvious. But so are the French. I don't think you're afraid of the French doing that.
No, yeah, but what I'm saying about Russia, it's bigger, isn't it? They're organized. They're more organized. They're
They're not
more.
really that organized. I can tell you a lot of funny stuff about how
Oh,
disorganized
really?
Putin is.
Because
Yeah,
the reason I'm saying that you will know best because you, you're, you're
I
Ukrainian
was
as
born
well.
in the area. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
So,
Russia does not have actual like territorial ambitions. That's the thing that people keep misunderstanding. The way the British love to the British foreign diplomacy, they always have a goal of not letting any one country in mainland Europe be powerful, so that they don't face a threat. And Russia, because it's always big, it's perceived as powerful when it's actually not. But what the British do is they will finance a resistance to Russia. So
so
in
Alexander, what does Putin want out of Ukraine? Why is he doing what he's doing? What does he want from it?
like I was saying, Ukraine is this current generation of uh, Ru- groups that were created to oppose Russia. You have the same thing in the Baltic states, to a
Yeah,
lesser degree in Poland. They just they finance the leftist protests in your area the same way they finance anti-Russia sentiment. So
yeah.
in Ukraine, it became especially uh, I don't know if racist is the correct word, but basically at least half the country is native Russian speaking, and like Ukrainians are there's like ethnic Ukrainians who are mostly in the western part. They're like a minority. Most of the people
Would you say they're
identify
more the
themselves.
Jewish side, the Ukraine's, the more Jewish side of it? Uh,
No, no. What Jewish side? Jews have never been any more than 5% in Ukraine. No,
yeah.
what I mean is that the Ukrainian group repressed people who think that they are not Ukrainian, and they literally banned the Russian language from being spoken in public, like that level. And I mean, I have a Ukrainian passport, a foreign passport, which I got from the birth certificate. And when I went to the uh, Ukrainian embassy here in Israel and I was filling out the paperwork, so when I write my name Alexander, he took my form and changed that to Alexander, so it will be like Alexander but with a Ukrainian accent. And same way, my father's name is Nikolai. He changed it from Nikolai to Mikola, so it will sound more
Oh,
Ukrainian.
okay. I've
It's
got a
not as
question for you.
yeah.
Grateful I said, asking, did Israel bring the soldiers home from the Ukraine and hurt their chances, or losing would happen anyway?
We had a lot of volunteers who went to Ukraine, like 4 or 5 thousand of them,
Mm.
and most of them they came back themselves. The Israeli army is secretly too big for its tasks, but at the same time under-equipped.
Yeah, because they,
So
they're in favour for Russia, though, aren't they? I know the Israeli army, you know. Is
no,
he Utah?
Russia is the main ally of Iran, so Israel as a country would obviously prefer if Russia lose. But what the decision makers didn't get is that by Russia losing, it only encourages them to fix their own problems and become much stronger. And now
Okay.
Russia reached a point where the military production within Russia itself is more than the rest of Europe combined. And that's not including the stuff that they get from China and Iran and North Korea. So by letting the Russians lose, they actually allowed them to become more empowered. And you asked me about the soldiers. We didn't send them in like official government policies, but because like there's a lot of people who speak Russian in Israel, a good 20-30% of the population can speak Russian. So even Ukrainian and Russian is very similar. It's like I would compare it to Shakespearean English and modern English. So if you talk very slowly, you can understand what is being said.
Yeah.
So people who speak Russian or were born in the area or just wanted to go and help, they volunteered in the Ukrainian army, and like thousands of them. And when the
But was
stuff
the
started,
Ukraine a part of the Soviet Union before they stopped the communism? They were, weren't they? They were part. At
Ukraine was
least,
always a part of Russia. They have been
yeah.
together. Like the Russian culture started in the Ukraine, but when Ukraine was devastated by the Mongols, the center moved to northern areas like
Yeah.
Moscow and later what you call today St. Petersburg. It was or the nearby city of Novgorod. So Ukraine always was a part of Russia. When the Russians reconquered the area from the Mongols and the Turks, the people still spoke almost the same language. So it's not like very different people. They started to become a very different people under foreign influence, mainly from the Polish and the Austro-Hungarians, who intentionally, again, like the British said, they created a group that is inherently hostile to Russia, and then Russia perceives them because they really are a serious threat, and then they send a military force to take care of them. uh, Same thing happened with Poland several times. It's Had Russia been left alone, they wouldn't invade. Russia as a country is always short on money because it all keeps getting stolen. So if nobody, if
Yeah, it
had they
does,
been left
doesn't it?
alone, they
Yeah.
would have just developed peacefully. But because they keep facing threats created by foreign countries on their borders, they keep having to fight these threats on the border. Because unlike cowardly Europeans, when your neighbor is trying to kill you, you go deal with it instead of hoping it will go away, and we will all sing happily ever after.
Mad. Absolutely crazy. Do you know what? It's do you know the Caucasus? Like you got the little countries like
Yeah,
is it Azerbaijan, Africa.
Azerbaijan.
Yes, it. Was that a breakaway country from Russia as well, from the Soviet Union? The
Um,
Caucasus.
in the Kafkaz, you have a lot of very ancient people, like as ancient as the Jewish people.
Yeah.
So you have, again, we talked about Armenians, Azeris, you had the Alanis, Balkarians, the Chechens. These are these are all people, of course, the Georgians. These people, they can trace their lineage back to before like Roman times, like
Yeah.
ancient Greece times. So they have been in that area for a very long time, and they're not uh, uh, newcomers to the region. But they, because it's a mountainous area, you don't have a lot of good farmland, so you always have like a fight over resources. You don't get very far, but they always had like a sense of tribal identity and autonomy. So when they were all under the flag of the Russian Empire or the Soviet
Yeah.
Empire, they were all in one country, so they didn't really care who exactly is what, because they were all under the same legal system. But once the country split up, you had a wave. People probably don't heard never heard of. There was a giant wave of wars in the Caucasus in the early 90s, and to an extent, they have a few conflicts that are still not fully resolved. The last big one was in the 888 war in 2008, and you had an area called Ossetia. So the Ossetian people are, again, have been there since Roman times. And when the Soviet Union fell apart, you had the North Ossetia becoming part of Russia and South Ossetia becoming part of Georgia. And the South Ossetias, they had a military war against Georgia, and they sort of won, and the Georgians never accepted them as winning, but they had like Russian peacekeepers.
Yeah.
And it's not exactly clear how, but the Georgians were convinced to attack Russian peacekeepers. And I'm not talking like accidental shooting, I'm talking like sending a tank brigade to try to kill them all. And the Russians counterattack, and the war lasted like 4 or 5 days. And well, the result was obvious. You don't invade Russia with just 5,000 soldiers; it'll end badly.
Oh god, that's you're asking for trouble. They're too organised. They're
Yeah,
too organised.
it's not organized. It's uh, foolishly. The famous picture was the Georgian president was he started to chewing on his own tie when he's talking on the phone because he was so stressed, because the Russians destroyed his army, and there was literally nothing stopping them. They could have just reconquered Georgia if they wanted to, but they didn't want to, so they just stopped after a couple miles and left the place.
All right, I've
And
got two questions for you. Right,
yeah,
one from Roger. Does Alexander speak other languages? Do you speak any other languages?
no, like I said, the Hebrew, English, and Russian. I can do a little Ukrainian, and I can understand maybe 100 words in Arabic.
Yeah.
Not much above
And the
that.
other question is, if the Ashkenazi Jews can they be traced back to Israel or the Middle East?
Yeah, of course. We talked about it on the last show.
Last two.
So people lie, stories lie, books lie, genetics do not lie. And in the, let's call it, biblical times, you already had a lot of seafaring. So uh, people, I don't know, I thought that in Britain a lot of people owned a small boat, but apparently it's no longer the case. But you can easily do 50, 100 miles a day on a boat with a sail with no problem,
Yeah.
even more depending on the season. So you had a lot of, and the Mediterranean is closed, and you have a lot of ports. So a lot of people migrated between areas. And back when Rome was founded, it was like, what, 600 BC, something like that. They already had a small Jewish community, and
Okay.
the Ashkenazi Jews, it's a genetic bottleneck because it's they all came from a group of about 300 people who, during the Black Death, uh, Germans being German, when the Black Death started, they thought that the way to fix the problem is to kill all the Jews because that would appease Jesus somehow. And most of the Jews in all of Germany were murdered, except for a small group of about 300 people that fled into it was a pagan kingdom of Poland, Lithuania. And that's the group that later turned into the Ashkenazis. And they very accurately trace the genetics from Germany back to southern Italy, the area of Naples, and from Naples to the area of the Levant. So, in the very ancient times, there was very little genetic difference between somebody living in like northern Syria and uh, eastern Greece, because the people were intermixed because they constantly traveled by ship. So the Jews, the Ashkenazi Jews, are very much clearly came from this. It's called the Levantine haplogroup. So yes, Jews are very clearly Middle Eastern, and again, I mean, I don't know if you see, I have a long nose. It's an adaptation for people living in the desert to filter out the sand. You have in northern Mexico also people who are genetically from Asians, because the Native Americans came from Asia, but they also developed long noses over time to handle the sand better. So yes, that's why we Jews have, some of us have the longer noses, because we trace back to the Middle East genetically.
Wow. Wow. Um, what else do you want to touch on?
I heard that they can be traced to 4 women in Haifa.
I think
What?
he's joking there.
Yeah. Um, well, I can talk about military stuff, how the war will develop. I don't know.
About the fake news, do you want to touch on the fake news?
Oh, give me the example that you want me to comment. There's so much fake news. I don't even know where to start.
What What do you feel? What do you think? Do you think so? There's a conspiracy, isn't there? Like, oh, Jews run the press, but I can't see it. Considering most of the press are totally against Israel, aren't they?
So again, these people are communists or even Satanists. They're not Jews. And even those that are of Jewish descent, they're usually the kind of people who, took the envelope with the money and do whatever they're told by the pairmaster. So not in their national interest, not even in their self-interest. So the people in the media, I mean, the I don't have to tell you as a streamer that the whole media game is not actually profitable. So the
Oh
people
no,
who the
no.
people who stay in the media business are the kind that have other forms of financing, and
Oh,
the
exactly. You can't make a living.
yeah. So
Yeah,
the point is, when you watch a TV channel, you don't get you get the point of view of whoever is paying for that TV channel,
yeah.
and that's so people create their media outlets to promote certain points of
Uh,
view. Which honestly, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm promoting my own point of view here on this media channel.
do you have to pay for a television license in Israel?
We used to have that stuff, and it was canceled about 8 years ago
Yeah, we
because
still got it.
we had a
What?
similar thing to BBC, and nobody watched it, so they canceled that.
Oh, why do you want to? They're fake news, aren't they? A lot of people are not paying for the licenses here because they're sick and tired of the BBC with their fake news and their agenda. You know, all their
Yeah,
agenda with certain
just
things.
stupid government trying to find ways to make people pay for something. I mean, I haven't watched TV like years.
Or have I?
Many years. It's an idiotic concept to just being told what to think by somebody in a studio because he has a nice suit and nice lighting.
Oh god,
That
the
doesn't make it
BBC.
right.
I have to show you. I've got to send you some documentaries of Tommy Roberts. He exposed the BBC actually.
Yeah, I've seen the panorama where they were
Oh,
conspiring
you have
against him,
seen that one, have you?
telling witnesses what to say to, and he
Yeah,
said that one of his employees was being blackmailed about something,
yeah,
and that's how they got him. Yeah, it's again, the BBC employees are being told what to do and what kind of agenda to promote, and based on that they're hired, and based on that they're getting paid. And it's really sad that in case of the BBC, it's paid by the government to
yeah.
promote anti-government views.
Oh
I mean,
god, it's ridiculous. It's fucking ridiculous. And do you
yeah,
know how
that's
much
why
they
we had the
charge for
same
it?
thing. We had the
Hundred
same thing
sixty
here with
pound,
the.
£160 a year to have a TV license. I think in this country, I don't pay it. I refuse to pay it. Do you know if years ago, not long ago, if you didn't pay it, you get put in prison for it. Yeah, I know it's crazy. It's crazy, but people have just turned in and said, "No, we're not paying for it." Fuck
Wait,
it. Why-
are they gonna search your house to make sure if you have a TV or not?
Yeah, of course they do. They knock on your door. They have these detectors on the top of the vans, and the airwaves goes to them, it tracks them.
Oh, fuck. Um. So you're telling me there's a market for transparent Faraday cages in Britain?
What do you mean? Yeah.
You know what's
Yeah.
a Faraday cage?
Well, that's what happens. They were going up. They're still doing it. They knock on your door. They catch you out, and they get
It's
put a
like a
fine. They put a fine on you, or you could go to prison
it's
for
like
it.
a chicken net, but when you run electricity through it, it blocks electronic signals from coming out because it's
Yeah,
absorbed by the magnetic field of the current going through the net. And you can easily make that not from metallic wire, but from
yeah.
transparent plastic. I mean, your screen right now is transparent plastic. So you just wrap it around the
Yeah.
TV, and
Yeah.
even if there is some sort of signal emanating from it, this thing will
But you,
block it, so they wouldn't
yeah,
know.
but Alexander, what they're doing now, they're saying because the radio stations, if you listen to the radio station, you're paying for the radio stations and you're paying for your computer and all that crap. What a load of shit. No one's paying it. It's
You need a computer license? Screw them.
well, they say that it covers the because you're using the computer. That
So
license covers the computer as well.
what? A computer is not a TV. I don't
I
watch
know, I know,
TV
I
on the
know, I
computer.
know, I know. They take the piss, yeah, but no one
It
doesn't
is
listen to him. Not anymore.
a bunch of criminals.
Yeah.
Didn't you? I used to read about the what do you call it? The English Civil War in the like 500 years ago, where the reason they revolted is that the king made too many stupid taxes and forced people to pay for like boats in harbor or something. So
Oh,
yeah,
it's fucking crazy, man.
mm.
Even then, we've got. Do you know what? This country's so expensive now. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
everywhere's expensive. I was surprised, like yesterday, I saw somebody complaining that a box of what you call it, morning cereal costs $7, and in Israel it costs 12. We get paid less than the Americans, and we don't
Um,
complain about it, even though it's
an
locally
average
produced.
box of cereal, all depends. Is they can be on special £2.50 to £3.50.
Wow, so that's in Israel it's like 5 times more expensive, even though we make all the ingredients locally.
What is that? The imported one or your own
No,
one?
no, the locally produced one.
Okay.
It's
So
we
how
have a
much
lot.
is a loaf of bread then? Or
About
bagels, like, you know.
there's a standard bread which is about $2 for 750 grams.
Okay, that's quite cheap actually. Yeah.
We have like one of the communist leftovers. Like Israel was originally founded it was communist in everything except the election system. So all
Mel
the
said
economic
cat food
stuff
is
was
there.
regulated by a committee, and
Mel
so
has
there
just said cat food's there in Israel. Is that true?
they had what?
Cat food's really dear in Israel, like animal food, like cat
Mm,
food,
I
dog
don't know,
food.
but we have we're importer of meat, so it would make sense that cat food would be expensive. I mean, my last girlfriend, she had 3 cats, and she was
Oh,
buying a non-allergenic veal or something like that.
wow.
I just fed them regular tuna, and
I
yeah,
mm,
I mean the dogs they will like eat almost anything, but the cats won't touch the dog food. They'll only take their good cat food.
with your medical fee, do you have to pay medical insurance, or are you like here everything's free?
Um, our medical system is actually one of the best ones in the world. It's actually
Yeah,
affordable. I get maximum coverage. We have like how do I explain it? You have like there's the national insurance which covers like disability and old age.
yeah,
This is like a straight up tax. It's if you're below a certain income bracket, it comes down to just $50 a month.
yeah,
And you have in addition um, there's the public medical insurance, which if you want to go see a doctor, it's split between four healthcare providers they existed since before the country was founded, and they're all basically the same, but it's like really cheap, especially compared to Britain. And I never had to wait for more than like 3 or 4 days to get a doctor's appointment, even up here in the north, when doctors usually don't live. And I had like a minor elective surgery. I had to pull a piece of fat out of my leg, and it cost me like $50, not including the bus ride.
oh,
And I
because
got the
everything's
appointment with
free here. Everything's free here.
yeah, but you have to wait in line for a very long time. I had to wait like a week,
Yeah,
maybe two,
yeah.
and it cost me next to nothing.
See,
And
what I
the
liked about Israel is there's something about it I like. It's quite clean. The streets are really clean. Do you know what I
uh,
mean?
depending on the neighborhood, but
Neighborhoods, yeah, but I would say the ones I went and the food, I just love the food over there. Sometimes the people could be a bit miserable over there. Yeah, but I do like it over there. I do like.
maybe in the rich areas they're miserable. No, it's. I mean, I had like. Oh, I'm gonna sound racist. So I was like walking in the street. It was a long time ago, and I see these two little kids, like 8 or 10 years old, and they're eating what you call it in English, sunflower seeds,
Okay, no.
and they're just throwing them in the street. And I'm like asking them, like, "Why are you littering in the street? What are you, Arab or something?"
Oh,
Yeah, because
oh,
it's normal for Arabs to trash the place, and for Jews, it's like, uh, I mean, the land is my home, so why would I intentionally trash it? It's not like the garbage is gonna magically disappear. I mean, it's my house, it's my street, I'm the warden of this area, so I wouldn't intentionally mess it up. But in big cities, especially places like southern Tel Aviv or Bnei Brak, you will see a lot of trash on the street. And that's because mostly the city hall is not paying the street cleaners to come pick it up, or you don't have the people, they treat it as, again, as a public space and not as their own private. If you go to like moshav, where the plot of land is somebody's personal property, he won't like throw the trash in his own garden, because obviously he's gonna have a house surrounded by trash.
Mill said ask you about the buses. Like
um
she's saying it's fantastic
how they pass the
how
money
they
to
pass
each
the
other.
money down.
That stopped like 10 years ago. We all have these specialized, it's like a credit card where you
Yeah.
charge it through your phone or through the app. Buses are really, really cheap because basically real estate is so expensive that the government wants to create
Oh,
a
she
condition
means
where
the
people
big.
can live without a car, so they subsidize the buses very heavily, so less people would buy cars, because if people had more cars, the government will have to build roads, and building roads is expensive. We have like 100% tax on cars, so they're double their production price here in Israel. I mean, the average car is a new car. You won't find one for less than $25,000 right
Yeah,
now.
because most of them like driving Volvos, don't they?
Volvos? No, I haven't seen
Well, in
Volvos yet.
England, most of the Jews bought Volvos.
Volvos are very reliable.
Swedish, yeah, but when I was growing up in London, like, because I'm a Londoner originally, Jewish people would buy Volvos. Yeah,
Volvo is very. It doesn't need a lot of maintenance. These days, it's more Toyota, Mazda, Hyundai. Um, but I mean, yeah, I would probably buy a Volvo if I had the option right now.
yeah, because
Uh,
they said because they like the Jews in London, they refused to buy a Volkswagen or something like that. Germany,
right, you
so
have
that they bought a
shipping
Swedish
costs.
car instead. They mostly bought Swedish because Volvo's Swedish. Yeah.
Don't you have like Renault and Peugeot across the channel? The French cars.
What's that? Saw that, mate?
Don't you have all these French cars like Renault and Peugeot across the English
Uh,
channel? They don't buy them. They still hate the French.
yeah. I think BMW's quite popular here. Mercedes and
I don't know about Britain, but in Israel, BMW and Mercedes are like twice as expensive because they have
yeah,
oversized engines.
yeah.
You don't really need that much of an engine. I mean, I don't know about British driving laws, but here in Israel, you can't really go fast anywhere. There's like only one special modern road, Route
Oh,
6.
really?
Everybody else, you can't go faster than 100 kilometers per hour. You can go 120 and not get punished, but if you reach 130, you're gonna get a fine.
Oh God. Oh no. I think 60 here. Yeah,
Within the city, not in
yeah.
the intercity roads.
Well, I don't know. No, they're very strict. Yeah, they really will do. Yeah, so yeah, it's quite crazy, really. I tell you, I want to go. If I do go over there, because I do like my football, I want to go to Happy Tel Aviv. Um, I want to go and watch them play
Yeah.
because the
Uh,
atmosphere is really good. By the looks, but
uh,
I know they are a bit fanatical. But I would like to experience a game over there. Yeah, Israel. Yeah.
hmm. I haven't been to like a football game in like, I don't know, 20 years. I went to there once with the high school or something, but I personally I never went there. I also live pretty far in the north, so we don't have a lot of
Yeah.
football teams in here. But Instead of watching sports, which is an imaginary fight, I watch the actual fights. I find the football game between Russia and Ukraine more exciting
Oh, you're on about the
than
hooligans.
Arsenal and Liverpool.
You're on about the hooligans.
No, I mean the real war.
Oh,
The-
sorry. I thought.
yeah,
All right. Sorry, I lost my way there. Sorry,
we
I
in Israel we
misunderstood.
have like two famous groups of hooligans, but they're mostly overwatched by the police because
Yeah, it's
uh,
Hyper Tel Aviv, isn't it? One and
mm, the Jerusalem one is famous and the Haifa one is famous.
yeah,
The
because
others
they're
are
pro. They're
are
pro.
either minor.
They're phonetic Jewish IDF supporters, aren't they? The
Uh,
Haifa. Yeah,
well, people who are not Jewish IDF supporters usually just leave the country. So, the,
yeah.
unless they're like Muslims, there's a big Muslim team called Bnei Sachnin. Uh, I suppose they have a hooligan group, but I'm pretty sure the police won't let them anywhere near the opposite hooligan groups because, I mean, uh, fighting somebody as an adult without sending them to the hospital or to their death requires a level of both skill and mutual understanding. Because as an adult, if you seriously fight somebody, you will easily break stuff with one serious punch. So in Britain, it's sort of half gentlemanly, where the clubs actually coordinate with each other who fights who, when, and under what conditions. So it doesn't resolve in a mass casualty event. But here in Israel, they don't take the risk.
Yeah.
Oh, the funniest. A good hooligan story. It's about Russia. It was around 2015, I think. So the Russian government had the stupid idea. So a lot of the Russian football fans, they heard about the English hooligan groups and they wanted to imitate them.
Oh God, the English want revenge on the Russians. Um, there was a battle in
In Marseille,
France.
yeah. So I
Yeah,
want to tell it from the Russian perspective because you probably didn't hear it. So the Russian government had the bright idea where, if you can't beat them, take them over. So
yeah.
they created a national federation of football fan clubs or something like that. And then because hooligans, these are people who are inherently, they love violence and
I
they're
know.
used to small squad tactics. So
Tell
this is
me
a very
about it.
good
Tell me about it.
it's a good recruiting ground for organized crime. So police will obviously want to monitor them closely. So the stupid Russian government had the bright idea for a game in Marseille that they will give two tickets for each club in each country and put everybody who gets this ticket on the same plane. So now you're old enough to remember stereotypes. So imagine Russians. Now, out of that, imagine Russian men who enjoy fighting. Out of that, imagine Russian men who enjoy fighting regularly, weekly, daily. And imagine that out of the Russian men who like fighting, they form a club, and within that club, only two guys get to go to a place where they are allowed to fight the British that they dreamed of fighting for years.
Yeah.
So out
I
of
think.
each club, they got this one or two guys who are worse than a professional MMA fighter, and then they put 50 of them in one plane so they had time to coordinate, form into squads, and
Yeah, I know.
just
I was
they should
there.
put it in a training manual. I saw it in a live stream when it was happening. They like
I
split
was
up into
there.
assault
I was.
squads, and there's like a Roman legionary formation, just beat up like a
Yeah.
thousand English hooligans.
Alexander, I was there. I was there when it happened.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the
Well,
biggest
it was
miracle is that
planned.
nobody died.
It was planned. It was planned by the French authorities and the Russians. What they done is they let them come through. They let them organise it. It wasn't just the Russians attacking; it was the French as well.
Oh,
They they actually joined up together. But do you know what? The English held
localized
their own,
assets, huh?
and then they had to fight the Tunisians. We had to fight the Tunisians through the day. They were starting because in 1998 it was a war, like a war massacre in Marseille with the Tunisians. So the Russians were waiting for 4 years to do this. Yeah, but
The Russians,
they
they
just
brought
trouble
in
is,
people who can beat up special forces people, and they put a team of 100 of them into a formation where they had the time to coordinate. So obviously they would beat up the disorganized rabble of the various English
oh no, these
groups.
Russians when they attacked, right? They were very organised. It was like army
Yeah,
coordination.
they're worse than the army. They're worse than the
Yeah,
special forces of the army.
yeah, and do you know what? Um, the English lads actually held their own, actually, because
Yeah,
they weren't up just against the Russians. They were up against the police and against the local Muslim community as well. Yeah,
yeah.
so they were
The
fighting
cowardly
all three
Muslims,
sets. Yeah.
cowardly Muslims will always use the chance on
No,
beating up
now
somebody who
what
looks
happened
Greek.
is, to be fair, in '98, English fans upset their community in '98, and they really did. They started smashing everything up, and it turned into a 24-hour fight fest. Yeah.
Sounds fun.
But the Marseille's always going to be a hotbed for that. It's going to, but Germany's going to be interesting now because I think the European Championships is going to be more political on what it is football. To be fair, how things are going now.
Well, it's an excuse to find the angriest people and let them fight each other in the street of somebody else's country. So a lot of opportunities in that.
Yeah.
But
I just but now you saying about the Russian hours there. I see. I'm 6'2", and the guy, honestly, grabbed me from behind and lifted me. I had to kick him in the butt. Do you know what I mean? He was fucking strong. Yeah,
yeah. Like I
yeah.
said, they found the 50 strongest people in all of Russia and sent them in one group.
Oh, they were very all good. Yeah, but I think what happened is I think they stayed over France, actually in France for a while. I reckon they coordinated with the ultras, the French ultras. So
Probably.
they were gunning for it. I mean, you know, they were gunning for us, but it was taken by surprise. I must admit, I was taken by surprise. I didn't think of nothing about the Russians for some reason. Normally, I would be on the ball, but
Uh,
yeah,
they
yeah,
trained
yeah,
for this fight for a good decade or two, so yeah, they came in
yeah.
prepared and it was
But, they kept,
coordinated by
but
special
we held our own. We held our own in the end. In the end, we held our own. It was just, it's a bit unfair fight, isn't it? Because they banned most of us lot going over there, the hooligans, and we can't carry weapons, but they're allowed to. So it's then you got the police having a go at you. You know what I mean? Any English fan tries to go abroad and they've been in trouble before, they've got to report to the police. You know,
Oh,
it's
really?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So a lot of them are on big banning orders. Yeah. If you had the old hooligans who weren't on the banner, then the Russians wouldn't have got away with that on that day. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, probably. Hmm.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
I mean, the French and the Russians, except for the whole Ukraine thing, they were usually well coordinated because they had Germany between them, and they also had a mutual uh, dislike for the British. But the French always betray the Russians when it counts. So in this case, they didn't, but in in other situations, the French would usually turn on the Russians.
Yeah, the Polish are quite nasty as well, actually.
Eh, they
But
have
they kind of respect the English, actually. They respect the English.
yeah, they have a
But
longstanding.
like, I know a lot of English fans are saying having the European Championships in Germany it's like a dream come true because England would take about like 40,000 to 100,000 over there and wreck the place. You know, it's Cologne or whatever it would be in. But yeah, it's a shame. But going back to the media, so what is the media like in Israel? What kind of what is there a left leaning one, or is there a right leaning one in Israel, or is it
Mm,
just a one?
we had up until about 10 years ago, we had very limited media because it was very regulated by the government. And like I said, it was regulated by the middle tier government
Yeah,
officials who were leftists. So almost all the media was leftist. And about 8 years ago, they created one newspaper and one TV channel that are right leaning, like intentionally right leaning, and they are obviously very popular. And so the courts, the Supreme Court, tried to shut them down. They even
yeah,
held an investigation on Bibi, on Netanyahu, that the lead, the owner of the biggest leftist newspaper, Haaretz, that all the lefties like to quote, he offered Bibi a bribe where he will give Bibi positive coverage in the newspaper if he shuts down the right wing newspaper that is competing against him. And Bibi didn't follow through with it, but he published the tape, and they actually investigated Bibi for attempting to accept a bribe. They
wow,
didn't obviously investigate the guy who made the offer of a bribe. No, 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 he's leftist. He won't be touched. But they investigated Bibi, and they still try to mix it up in the court, but it obviously doesn't get anything. And we have right now in the last 3 or 4 years, Channel 14, which is very openly right leaning, and in some of the hosts are like uh, what in Israel would be considered the extreme right wing, and it's obviously the most popular channel on TV. And but most people still watch the other three TV channels who are very leftist. They're like like literally supporting the enemy, leftists. I mean, I've seen a show. I mean, they pop up in recommendations on YouTube sometime, and just to have a laugh, I go watch them. And they had like one of those from the protests, from the anti-Israel and pro-Israel protests in London,
yeah.
and they found a guy who is very clearly homosexual, and he said like, "No, I'm walking around London and I'm talking in Hebrew and I'm not feeling unsafe in any point. Like, totally, yeah, it's fine." And they did go into the Palestinian pro-Palestinian crowd, and they had like I mean, if you've been to the protest, you know they have these minders when they told you don't talk to the press, don't talk to them. They're Israel. They'll twist your words. So they didn't get much out of them except that except the usual slogans. But
Yeah,
it was all presented leftist, and they started like again doing the whole if Israel renews its attacks in southern Gaza, then the world will public opinion will go against us, and trying to just scare us into not doing anything like they usually want. But yeah, it's like they always put a leftist spin. Even on the protests in New York, they try to like show from the '60s where these people think that they're like in 1968 protesting against Vietnam or for civil
Uh,
rights or stuff like that. So they obviously try to promote a leftist perspective, but most people are totally out of it, especially after the war. There's like maybe uh, not of the Jews. There's maybe like 5% leftist left. Even like the hardcore communists that live in the kibbutz communes realize that nobody will like stop and ask their political views when the jihadis show up.
do you know what I was going to say to you? Oh, God, hang on. Oh, do you know what? I just forgotten what I was going to. There was something I really wanted to ask. Uh, that's it. Do you get any welfare help if you're off if you can't find a job? Do they give you any?
Unemployment. If you
Do they get benefits like in this country?
Yeah, the main one is like child benefits,
Yeah,
which are pretty serious, especially after you have more than 5 kids. And
yeah,
the ultra-Orthodox and the Muslims also have a lot of them. But in terms of like social security for unemployment, it's not a big amount. It's about $800, $900. So you
what
can't
about?
afford an apartment on that. And they usually have these like special job places for
Yeah,
disabled people.
yeah.
So even if you are like disabled, they will encourage you to find a job. I mean, there are people who are like seriously unemployed, but they're usually, over 50.
Okay.
I mean, we have a lot of people living off welfare. It's again mostly the religious types who have a lot of children, and they just off of having a lot of children, they
Yeah.
manage to scrounge up a living. And there's a lot of anger in the non-religious Jewish public that the religious are not having a job usually. It's they actually uh, they send the woman to have a job and the man stays at home with the
Yeah.
kids because
It
it's
seems
studies
to be the
Torah.
trick, doesn't it? Uh, doesn't it, behind this special religion thing? But in England, a lot of Jews and that have got their own businesses or do their own thing. You know what I mean? So
And because they don't have the I mean, I get sometimes into arguments with the religious Jews who say that we should fund the yeshiva, the religious schools, and I always give the counter argument: who funded the giant religious schools that there were in the 19th century? Was it the Russian Tsar? Maybe the Polish government? No, they managed to exist without any government support. So
yeah,
if you're so religious and faithful, you can also have a job. It doesn't exclude each other.
no,
And it's just the Israeli government is not all the governments, both right and left. They would rather just pay them to get their political support instead of trying to fight them off. Same reason they don't go to the army. Going to the army is quite stupid, especially in a financial sense. So yeah. Um, Actually, the religious parties they're secretly leftist, so they want redistribution of wealth. They just instead of being like Marxist socialists, they wrap it around the religion and charity. So it's a form of
yeah.
charity to redistribute our tax money into their pockets.
Well,
Yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of attempts to reform that because obviously the religious people are afraid that when the young men and women they see the other society outside their very limited one, then they will choose freedom and become less religious. So they oppose that obviously. But it's an ongoing struggle. The basic problem is that Israel never made a constitution, so it's just a bunch of a constant argument again. What happens and what doesn't happen, how the government intervenes and how
Yeah.
it doesn't intervene, and it's a permanent struggle between Parliament and the Supreme Court.
Wow.
So yeah, it's one of those. They chose not to solve the problem, and the more they don't solve it, the worse it gets.
Wow. Right, Alexander, I've got an appointment at 5:30. I've got to make a move.
Okay.
Uh,
And, was very fun.
I'll be back on later if you're around.
We did 3 hours. I think the viewers are a little tired. We can try it tomorrow.
Okay, that's cool. Do you want to do it in the evening though?
Tomorrow is Thursday. Yeah. Let's do it in the evening. It'll catch more views.
Evening, and so I say, so you're 2 hours ahead of me, aren't you? So 6, 7. So we would say 8 o'clock your time. So that's 6 o'clock my time.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
Thursday.
Sorry
Yeah.
about. I've got an appointment at 5:30. I can't
No,
miss.
it's we've done
Thank you.
3 hours. I'm sure the viewers also need a rest.
No, they've enjoyed it. And we'll go in the evening because we'll have more viewers as well for you as well, mate. So,
Yeah. Okay. So.
all right. Thanks,
See you all
Alexander.
later.
Thanks for the
Thank
chat,
you too.
man. Thanks, Lodge. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for the newbies. Please come back. Come back. We
Yeah.
have all kinds of, yeah.
Yeah, and please call some Muslim I can argue with. It'll gonna be really fun. We'll have a lot of
Well,
clips out of that.
I think he bottled it because he knows he
Well,
couldn't take you on.
I'll leave an open invitation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we will do. I
Uh,
might do a PAPKOV a clickbait title actually to get him over here. Yeah.
I'll leave that to
I'm
your
only
creative
joking.
talent.
Becca, she's a Muslim, but she's a lovely lady. Becca, hi Becca. She's a nice, honestly, she's a lovely lady. Yeah. Um. Anyway, see you later. I better go and do my appointment.
Okay.
Tomorrow, 6 o'clock. Then it is. All right. I'll see you
Okay.
later, mate.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Mm.